Hey guys, welcome to Now That's Debatable. This is your host, Fantastic Facade, and I am joined as always with my trusty co-host, AAA the Humanist. Today we have a special guest speaker, Sam, who's going to be joining us, and the topic is going to be justified immorality. So without further ado, I'm going to cut the music, I'm going to get our faces up on the screen, and we'll kick this thing off. How's everybody doing today, guys?
Chilling, man. How you
As
Sam?
always, I have chat up on the screen, so if we have any questions, we'll try to get to those. If you have any questions for anyone here, please feel free to ask them. We're going to go ahead and kick things off. Sam, how are you?
I'm pretty good. How about yourself?
Doing all right. Thanks for joining us. So today we're going to be talking about justified immorality. It seems like there's a little bit of disagreement between you and AAA that you kind of had in conversation, so I didn't read all of it. I got the gist of it, but let's talk it out and have a discussion on it.
Yeah, I think that's what triggered my initial desire to have a conversation was I think you had said that the system, it would be better if we just didn't have justified immoralities altogether, just moral and immoral.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it doesn't make sense to say something is bad or wrong to do, but okay to do.
Yeah, so here's why I do that. For instance, you're gonna have things that are gonna obviously violate well-being. But if we call it moral, then well-being can't be the standard. Like for instance, let's say where I'm walking down the street and somebody's trying to kill me, right? And I fight back and I use lethal force against them because I carry a gun pretty often. So and it's like I shoot them before they can shoot me. They died, right? That's not good for well-being, right?
Yeah.
All right. So because obviously it's not because he died. So you're gonna have to say that something like that is either moral, which now well-being is no longer the standard, or you're gonna have to say that my act of self-defense is going to be in the same category as a murder. You understand what I'm saying?
Well, no, I don't. So if you change it to like only do, I just did it again.
Like you can't hear us?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, I don't know what's going on with my headphones. Anyway,
if you want to take your headphones out, you can probably do that as well. Me and Facade, we both have our headphones on. There shouldn't be an echo. We've done that.
Well, it'll be coming over my speakers and pick up on my headphone,
gotcha.
my mic. So if you what I was going to say. So if you change it from something like do no harm or only do to minimize harm, then you don't have to have those in the same category. You can say what is minimizing the harm.
Well, there may be instances where harm isn't minimized, but most people, I think society at large, would still say was okay. Like for instance, let's say that you kill me in self-defense, right? But I wasn't going to kill you. I was just going to rape you, and you were going to be able to live and go on with your life. Would you say that what you did is justified? Or would you say it's okay?
Yeah, I'd say that's okay.
Right. So even if we use the minimize harm thing, that may not be a practical way, right? Because you resorted to lethal force to prevent something that wasn't going to kill you. So if we're talking about on a scale of well-being, right? Well, you may be able to argue that maybe rape in certain ways is worse than death. Maybe, I don't know. But I mean, generally, I would say um, harming somebody's well-being is less bad than ending it altogether, which would be killing someone. But so do you see what I'm saying? So even
Yeah.
if we that method, just saying, hey, we're just going to minimize harm, you're still going to run into what I would consider moral absurdities. Because in this case, somebody couldn't resort to lethal force if the only thing that their assailant was trying to do was rape them.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I can see what you're saying, but to me, it seems like you'd have less of those where you have to say this is a bad thing to do, but it's okay to do. You would have
So I wouldn't even. Well, what do you mean by okay?
justified. When you're saying justified, it's not it's a bad thing to do, but it's okay.
Yeah, so I wouldn't say that is okay. Like this is something that is unfortunate. It shouldn't have happened, but because of the situations, the person who did said immoral act is excused. So we're not saying it's okay. We're just saying we're not going to hold this person responsible for their violation of well-being because of the context of the situation. That's very different from saying it's okay to do this.
Oh, sure, okay. I maybe okay isn't the right word, but still, it seems like you'd have less of whatever that is if you would say minimize harm or maximize well-being versus do no harm.
I would still say
so
let me jump in with just like another analogy, and let's say hypothetically you're getting in a street brawl, and the person is the size of AAA is going over there and attacking some little stick dude that weighs 100 pounds, right? I mean, AAA is a big guy. He easily beat the crap out of that guy. Well, if you minimize harm, technically, if you just tranquilize AAA, or you had enough guys to go over and stop him, then no harm would come together other than him being not able to beat up the little stick guy. However, in the situation, that's not really a viable option unless you have a couple guys that are pretty big that can stop him. So you're kind of left with what's left as your option. I mean, maybe if you have a taser, that could be a great option, or pepper spray as a first line of defense versus like lethal. But a dedicated AAA versus 100-pound dude probably isn't gonna go well. So, in the interest of minimizing harm, I mean, technically, your first line of defense would be verbal. You just be like, stop, just don't do it. But
sorry, I didn't mean.
yeah. I mean, but it seems that in a situation where obviously things are about to go sideways, and you're the person on the receiving end of that, your fight or flight's going to kick in. You're either going to try to get the heck out of there, which you may not be able to do, which that's always a great option, retreat. However, the other option being do whatever you can to live, because if AAA makes contact with the haymaker, he could easily A, just straight up knock you out, or B, worse, kill you.
Okay. I mean, I'm not really sure what you were getting at with that analogy.
So I mean, in the sense of trying to minimize harm, is your first line of defense in that situation? Let's say you're on the receiving end of a haymaker coming at you from AAA, and you weigh about $110. Is your first line of defense to tell them stop that? The answer is probably no. And no one's going to judge you for trying to do anything in your power to defend it. Hence the reason justified. Now, if you end up pulling out a gun and you shoot them 10 times in the head, that's different. If you end up pulling out a taser and you knock them unconscious,
Yeah. I mean, personally, I'm not much of a fighter, and if someone were coming at me with a haymaker, I would probably start with verbals like, "Hey, why are you doing this?" But if that had already been exhausted, that option has already been exhausted. And I can't imagine, like, just me personally, if someone were coming up with me to punch me and there was nothing I could do about it, I don't even know if I would punch back. That's just not kind of who I am. But I wouldn't hold anyone accountable for fighting back. I mean, that's
Tell me this: do you disagree with using well-being as the metric?
oh no, I think that's a
Okay.
great.
All right. So let's reduce it down. We're gonna get rid of justified immoralities. We're just gonna reduce it down to moral and immoral. All right. So you just have two categories of two categories that any act could fall into, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now you have two instances when somebody's killed, right? And instance number one, somebody murders somebody, or someone's murdered because it's a contract for hire, right? Somebody's is just paid to kill, so they're just killing for money, all right? And the second instance, someone is killing because they're trying to protect a loved one, right? They're trying to protect their small child from being harmed, right? Now, in both instances, someone is being killed, so there's a violation of well-being. If we get rid of justified immoralities, they fall into the same category. The one where somebody is being murdered it's a murder for hire, and someone that's killed in self-defense.
No, because in those instances, you've killed someone to protect someone else.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a factor too. That was not a factor in the murder for hire. You are maximizing the well-being of this person that was going to be hurt as well. So there's.
Are you not considering the well-being of everyone?
In both instances, you've got one person dead.
Mm-hmm.
So even if you just look at simple numbers, those are, we'll say those are equal as far as overall well-being to the human population. Those are equal. But with you protecting someone, you have the protection that you did to someone else to increase their well-being, that potential well-being. You protected their well-being that you don't have with the contract killer. That person they were contracting to kill, wasn't threatening anyone. Presumably, I mean, you didn't say that. So it's still, you're increasing the well-being overall.
Okay, gotcha. It seems like you're approaching this like more like a utilitarian approach, right? So you're saying,
yeah.
Okay, all right. So I'm not a utilitarian.
Okay.
I think utilitarianism has some problems, not just epistemically, but also aside from the fact that it's kind of hard to just measure well-being. But
sure,
I think it could even justify atrocities, right? So, like, for instance, let's say I'm happy. Let's say that my well-being is increased. Let's do this. So there's actually a higher amount of well-being on Earth because my happiness increased if you're dead than the happiness that you receive by living.
Okay.
You tracking what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I'm happier. So, like, the amount of happiness that I get from you being dead exceeds what both of us would total if you were still alive. So in this instance, the moral thing to do would be to kill you.
So one is, I mean, I think there might be an equivocation going on with happiness and well-being. Those aren't necessarily the same, but
no, they're not.
But we'll say,
but happiness is
you're
part of well-being, right?
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
So that's what I'm saying. So like this, so the amount of happiness that I would get from you being dead, right? That exceeds the total amount of well-being that both of us would have if you were alive. I'm like the happiest person ever.
Yeah. I mean, it's I'm not that would be a problem.
Yeah.
I don't think see like
What about
if
like
I
for instance, like we talked about the Holocaust a lot on this channel, right? What if we
yeah
said like the Germans, let's say they were actually I don't believe this, but let's say the Germans actually did benefit from the Holocaust, right? And or let's say the world actually benefited from the Holocaust. Would that make it okay to resort to genocide? So like in my system, I would say that's still immoral. Let's say everybody actually did benefit from 12 million people, being slaughtered like that. That would still be immoral because it violated the well-being of the ones being killed. Like so I'm not weighing well-being. I'm not measuring my well-being, your well-being, and all that kind of stuff. I'm not like totaling it together and see which one's way more. I say if something violates your well-being, it is immoral. Period.
okay.
That's how I'm doing that.
So what makes sorry, I'll answer your question.
Mhm.
I don't have an answer for the Holocaust question. It would seem to be wrong. I would say, everything is like a heuristic. We we say normally this action promotes well-being, or
Mhm.
this action minimizes harm or whatever. Um, and but that's not always the case. There's a time where let's say you're into some being beat up. You like that.
Mhm.
Well, in that case, beating you up is helping your well-being, although it wouldn't seem like
I mean, it could. It's doing a little bit of both, right? Because we consider health, we also consider happiness. Well,
yeah.
that's how I consider it. So
So
there's some times where they can go against each other, where they can be the interests can be competing, and sometimes where they can support each other. But
yeah. But assuming your the happiness you get from being beat up is outweighing the health detriment you're having, I mean
Mhm.
that would make that a thing that would be moral to do, I suppose. But
I don't know.
In general, well, I mean under my
Okay.
maximizing your well-being, minimizing harm.
Mhm.
Um, but as a heuristic, we're going to say beating up a person is not going to maximize their well-being. So that your heuristic is going to not always be correct because you don't know what the future is. But with your what makes something justified?
The context of the situation. So there's a lot of things that can make it justified. I mean, and there's in the justification is more epistemic than ontological. So what I mean by that is that the justification, I consider your knowledge of the situation and not uh the actual events that are taking place. Like for instance, let's say I walk outside with a gun that's not loaded, right? And I pointed at a cop. That cop's life is not in danger because there's no way I can harm him unless I hit him with it. But pointing a empty pistol at him, his life isn't in danger. But he believes it is, and because he has good reason, right? Because I'm pointing a gun at him. He's not able to assess the magazine and see whether or not there's ammo in it. He doesn't even have time to consider all that. So he could shoot me and it'd be justified.
Okay.
So
I
it's
mean,
the overall context, but it is more epistemic than ontological when it comes to justifications.
sure. And so like for me, that it is somewhat, what the results are, but also you only have the knowledge that you have available, and you only have the options you have available in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
And that has to be taken into account as well, as far as, were you trying to.
Yeah, I'm not saying epistemology is all that matters when it comes to justification, but that is primarily what I'm assessing.
Okay. So what keeps the Holocaust from being justified?
Well, because it violated people's well-being. Well, I'm sorry, that's what made it immoral. So what made it unjustified? Well, let's think about it. Was Hitler, was he acting in self-defense? No.
Well, I don't know.
I mean, right? That's what.
Sorry.
I mean, so to me, that about rules it out.
The Holocaust, a hypothetical Holocaust. Is there a hypothetical
Holocaust
that could be justified?
Yeah. So I can't think of one. So I can't think of a justification for wiping out millions of people. Maybe an individual. Maybe if all of them were attacking you, if that was the case, maybe you could make an argument like that. But I can't think of a justification where you could resort to genocide, because one of the things that I consider as well is not only the consequences of any overt act, but also the moral precedent that's being set. Anytime an act is done, the public takes an attitude on it. We make a judgment, and even a lack of judgment, that's really just a tacit approval of it, right? So we can condone it, or we can condemn it, right? And not condone it, not condemning is tacitly condoning it. You see what I mean by that? Like, for instance, let's say like I get mad at you and I beat you up. The public, the government finds out about it and does absolutely nothing. Well, they did pass judgment on it. They just said it's okay. So like, those are things that we have to look at. So even in situations, let's say there was some actual problem with some specific sect of people, right? Some ethnic group or whatever. And let's say well-being would actually increase if that group was to be eliminated. Well, if we're going to consider genocide like an answer to any solution, you got to think about the moral precedent that you're setting. Because like, now that it's on the table, and now anytime we run into any sort of problem, yeah, we can resort to this. So like, there's a lot of things that I have to consider, not just the immediate consequences of it.
Sure, but that works for me too.
Okay.
I mean, because all of that could be, because even in at least my version of utilitarianism, it's not just the immediate utility of it; it's the utility for the next 300 years or whatever. That's something to consider as well.
Gotcha. What do you do in cases where well-being is maximized by harming some innocent victim, like the scenario that I just gave you a few minutes ago? So like, there's actually more well-being because of my happiness is increased. Also, my wealth is increased as a result, because I can take some of your stuff, right? And so the total well-being of, I hear an echo, but the total well-being of both of us is outweighed by my individual well-being once you're dead. Like, as a utilitarian, how would you handle that?
How would you know that? I can't answer that, because I can't imagine a situation where I would know that's the case.
Well, so let's throw epistemology out of it. Let's just say you're God and you know this is the situation. You're just omniscient. So, like, by your estimation, it would be good, right?
I mean, if I think it's good, then I think it's good, I guess. I mean, it doesn't.
Well, okay, but what I'm saying is the utility is maximized by you being killed. Let's get like even deeper. Let's say the utility is maximized by a rape. That the pleasure that the rapist gets from raping someone is outweighs what both the rapist and the victim would have gotten if the rape never occurred.
I'm sorry, I have trouble imagining that where that could even be possible. Like,
let's just say it's possible.
Let's go with a nonsensical thing, because that I mean I get your point, AAA. I think it's really on the fringe. Let's go with something much easier to conceptualize, given we just came off of a national and global pandemic. Let's say there are people that are infected with a virus that will kill a bunch of other people if they're not killed themselves. In a utilitarianism view, these people who have done no harm to others and did not by choice get infected with this virus, the utility of killing them would prevent future deaths of a lot more people. Could you justify killing them in your worldview?
Just like killing them?
Well, yeah, because if you don't kill them, the virus will spread to other people. And it will kill more people. Like, let's say hypothetically, there's like 30 people that are infected with this virus. But if you don't kill them, everyone in North and South America will get infected, because it's going to spread from person to person if you don't kill this group of 30 people.
And this virus, I assume, is going to kill more than 30 people?
I mean, it's going to kill the entire population of North and South America.
Yeah, I would say, yeah. I mean, it sucks, but if that's the only option, if that's the best option, then...
So it sounds like that genocide or something like approaching the Holocaust would be okay on your system.
I mean, I don't know how you would know that, but like,
we're throwing epistemology out the window. We're just talking about the ontology of the situation. Let's say, like, we know for certain that the utility is going to maximize utility by resorting to genocide.
I mean, so, like, if you could have killed baby Hitler, and that would have stopped the Holocaust, would you do it?
Well, I don't know.
But I think we kind of changing the topic.
Well, no, I mean, it is. It's just the same. It's the same topic.
I mean, it's not like I might do it, but it wouldn't be moral. You see what I'm saying? It's like you're asking me like what my preference would be, and maybe I would commit this immoral act because I think it'd be worth it in the end. But that wouldn't make it moral. It would be immoral in my view.
Sure, and that's what I'm saying. But
what you're saying, it would be moral.
If you knew for a fact, I think I would consider that moral.
So and what if by killing 12 million people, right, that would prevent some greater atrocity later on?
I think if you knew for a fact, and we're thinking epistemology, we know for a fact that by killing these large amount of people, we're going to save a larger amount of people from being more harmed. Then, I think so.
Yeah, I just fundamentally disagree. So this is why I'm not a utilitarian. So like there's cases like this where you could justify the Holocaust, and then now if we throw in epistemology, it gets even more muddy, because how do we know that Hitler didn't prevent some greater atrocity from happening? Like it could be.
I have no reason to believe that is the case. I
I
don't think you should do harm uh, if you don't think it's if you don't have a really good reason. I'm not saying and something like that. I mean, I would have to know like who is actually going to be the 13 million that are going to be.
but you can't. So I could say for certain that the Holocaust is immoral, but I don't think you could. Not if you're using that model, because you couldn't rule it out. I mean, you're talking about this 12 million people. Is very possible that one of these 12 million people, that's a lot of people, would grow up to become something worse than Hitler. Perhaps become like a Joseph Stalin who killed, 20 million people, or Mao Zedong who killed 50 million people. Right? That dwarfed what Hitler did. Perhaps there were multiple dictators that multiple would have been dictators that were killed as a result of the Holocaust. Or perhaps don't even just limit it to those 12 million people. Those 12 million people would have lived lives, had children, and so there would have been millions of more. So we're talking about the probability of them at some point producing some awful people. I mean that's a real possibility. I don't think, I mean, I couldn't say that for certain, but I don't think you could rationally rule it out. I don't even think you could even say with any level of, I couldn't put any more than a 50-50 on it, honestly.
You couldn't put it any more than a 50-50 on the
Holocaust. Yeah, 50-50 that Hitler didn't kill somebody that would have or prevented the existence of someone who would have become worse than him.
I mean, also, let's keep in mind that time still moves forward. So it's still possible that the effects of the Holocaust weren't necessarily even in place yet. So, for instance, we know, and I know it's not just one person, but for instance, Werner von Braun was came from.
I already know what point you're making. Go ahead.
Yeah, came from the line of Nazi Germany. Okay, he moved to, I believe, South America first, before moving to North America to help found the the Manhattan Project. He was one of the founders of the Manhattan Project, which interlaid the atomic bomb. If some point in time in the future we end up with mutually assured destruction and use all the nuclear warheads that we have, or even some of the nuclear warheads that we have, we're going to kill hundreds of millions, if not billions, of people. And without Werner von Braun's help, that wouldn't have been necessarily possible. You see what I'm saying? You have this really odd change of history. And by the way, that's a real guy in a real scenario. He's considered one of the founding fathers of modern rocketry and weapons. And obviously, the Manhattan Project was a whole group of individuals, including people like, even Einstein. But it's what's to say that, one of those people that would have otherwise lived through the Holocaust wouldn't turn into, even accidentally, a giant mass murderer. They could have, sped lined the process of the atomic bomb or nuclear warheads or chemical warfare that was being tested in concentration camps in Germany that otherwise would have still could potentially be ongoing. So the question is, since I don't know anyone that's omnipotent or omniscient, we can't really be certain that that's not the scenario that we're currently living in. However, in Triple A and I's own viewpoint, we cannot justify something like the Holocaust because you would say that there's no immediate imminent danger to the lives of the Germans by people living in their own cities peacefully. For instance, like Poland, which was one of the first places occupied by Nazi Germany in the 1930s,
But I can't do that.
wasn't a direct impact on Germany. They weren't oppressing them, they weren't oppressing their people, they weren't actively threatening them, and then the Germans came and occupied Poland.
But
In
I
your
can't
scenario, you could justify that because what if the Poles eventually led to something way worse than the Holocaust?
I mean, how would I know that?
Well, that's the point. That's the problem with utilitarianism. That's the whole problem.
Yeah, you couldn't say for certain that it was wrong. Like maybe. I mean, and you're talking about these 12 million people, 12 million bloodlines going out the world and doing things, and maybe affecting someone in a certain way. Perhaps someone that would have lived if it wasn't a result of the Holocaust, would have had a grandchild that would have moved to America and then convinced me to become a dictator and kill, I don't know, like 100 million people. Like what I'm saying is the Holocaust was such a huge event that dwarfed the world in such a way. There is no telling what the world will look like now if that didn't happen. We can't say for certain that it wouldn't have maximized well-being or at least increased well-being by the way you're defining it under utilitarianism. Like you can't say that with any reasonable level of certainty, I don't think. And so when if someone were to ask, what was it was the Holocaust wrong? I think the best you could say is, maybe.
I can see where you're getting that. I have it's if you have, I mean, if you're throwing out epistemology or whatever, then and you're saying I know things.
Well, I'm
that
keeping
I can't know.
I'm keeping epistemology in it. Let's say if you were omniscient, then if you knew all of that stuff, then you could look into the future and say for certain that is the case, right? But now the scenario that we're describing now, the fact that you're not omniscient, it makes it very problematic. Like omniscience would be a way to escape this scenario. You could just say, "Oh, I can look and I know what the world would look like if the Holocaust never happened, and it in fact was bad." There you go. That you would have ended it. Okay. But like so this scenario has epistemology built into it.
Okay, so you're saying I don't know what the world would look like. I can't say it wouldn't be better.
I think that's kind of the problem
because
the crux of the problem.
And all I can say is to that is that's where I rely on the heuristics. We say these types of actions tend to not help well-being, and I don't know that in every case, but in general, I know that this is what the tendency is.
Yeah, but like so as Tribble was pointing out, we can't really see, because of how large of a scale the Holocaust was, we can't really see all the ways that it impacted the world we live in or would have impacted the world we live in if we don't if it never happened, right? So we can't see the children and the grandchildren and the great-grandchildren that would be alive today of the Holocaust, the victims of the Holocaust, had they not been killed. So we don't know. I mean, they could have come forward and invented technology that helped people live another 50 years, but they also could have come forward and turned into another Mao Zedong or another Hitler himself and caused great chaos. We just don't know, and there's no way for anyone to determine what would have happened had those people been alive in reality, right? So at best, I think what we're trying to say is that in a specifically in a situation of utilitarianism, the best you could say is that typically murder or the Holocaust would be considered bad, but we're not sure of that because it could have prevented some greater disaster.
Yeah, I guess you're right. Under strict that you can't say anything for certain.
Yeah, so I mean, I would say that's part
Well,
of the
I mean,
problems of
I,
utilitarianism.
I wouldn't. Yeah. So like, I mean, like, I think we would all agree that you can't say it for certain. But like, I don't think you could even reasonably say it. Like, I can't say for certain that, like, I have this energy 10, right? I can't say for certain that in the next 5 minutes it won't morph into a dinosaur, but I can reasonably say that it won't do it, right? Because it would be unreasonable to think that could happen. What I'm saying is, with the Holocaust, I don't think it would be unreasonable to say that well-being, the utility of it, wouldn't have been would have wouldn't have increased as a result of the Holocaust, because of how big of an effect on the world that it had. So I'm not even talking about certainty. I'm just talking about what one could, like, any sort of like any prediction that would be reasonable to make. I don't think you could say that. I'm not even looking for certainty, just reasonableness. And I don't think you could rule that out.
I don't know how I don't know where you're getting. It doesn't, like, you're saying
Okay,
that.
so let me ask you this, maybe it'll help clarify. And AAA, if I'm going the wrong direction with it, you can clarify. But
Mm-hmm.
I think this question will make a lot of sense and help you kind of get what we're saying here. On a scale of 0 to 100, 0 being I am not at all certain because I know nothing and I don't even know how to read or write. 100 being I am an omniscient being and I know the future and I know all there is to know. How certain are you that the Holocaust did not prevent a worse tragedy?
For me, I can't go above 50-50.
I think that's the problem, and that's kind of why I worded the question this particular way. Because if you're an omniscient being, you would know for sure whether it prevented a tragedy or not. If you don't know anything, you may not even be aware of the Holocaust existence, right? But somewhere in the middle is you. And if you can say with any certainty beyond about 50%, which is where we're putting you, or where I'm coming to the table at, then I'd want to know why it's more than about 50%. I want to know what is your justification for assuming so. Because not only do you have the death of 12 billion people that would have been undone, but their children, their wives, where they moved to, what their jobs were, their grandchildren, the impact they had on their neighbors and community and everything else that you don't account for or can't account for because their lives were so untimely taken from them.
Also, that cause of chain would have gone on for eons.
Yeah, I mean, literally until present
Right.
day and into the future.
You're right. Yeah.
Yeah.
It would have kept going as long as humanity exists. Probably maybe even past then. So we
Yeah, I
evolved
mean,
to
like,
something else. Right. It would have. There's no telling. I don't know how you could rule this out.
like we know for certain that people that survived the Holocaust are still living today. Like we know there's some older people that are still alive that survived the Holocaust. I think there's still a few still survivors still, right? Their grandchildren and great grandchildren are around our age ish. Sometimes, depending on how recently they had children and all that fun stuff, right? But let's just say in 2 or 3 more generations, which would be like our grandchildren or our great grandchildren, which would be 6 generations separate from the Holocaust. Someone that was a direct descendant of that doesn't turn out to be the person that decides that we're going to nuke the whole planet. That's 6 generations, right? That's 100, 150 years. How do we know that a direct descendant of the Holocaust isn't going to press the nuclear option? In your scenario, in your world, and using utilitarianism, I don't see that you have any faith that that's not going to happen. And mine, it's not a problem because I don't care. You killed a bunch of innocent people. That's wrong. That's the end of the story. In your situation, if you could see 150 years in the future and you knew that a direct descendant of someone who was killed in the Holocaust was eventually going to destroy the world, you would then have to justify the Holocaust by saying it prevented a future disaster.
No, not at all.
Nuclear war. Why not?
Because all I have to do is kill that one person. I don't have to kill 12 million to kill that one person.
No, you have to prevent the Holocaust. You can't just kill the one person.
Yeah, because you're not going to live to that side of things. Like, it's the whole chain of events that caused this lead up to where we are.
No, what you're saying, what you're proposing is I can't call the Holocaust bad because I don't know that one of those people that died in the Holocaust wouldn't have done, their descendants wouldn't have done a greater atrocity in 150 years.
Or caused.
Or whatever. And I'm saying I can say the Holocaust is bad because it's just that one person. It's not all 12 million people.
But the Holocaust prevented that.
Yeah, but the Holocaust also prevented the other 11,999,999 as well.
Yeah, but what we're saying is, so like the harm that they would have done, the harm that this one individual would have done, or the causal chain that would have resulted as from this one individual, right, far exceeds what happened in the Holocaust.
Yeah.
How could you rule that out?
Well, what I'm saying is it's still minimized well-being or maximized harm, whichever way, because not all of them had to die. And so because that's what killed them is might be,
do you think happiness,
but it doesn't justify killing everyone.
Do you think happiness is a good measure of well-being?
I think it's a major part of it. Yeah.
Okay. Do you think like receiving reward is also part of that? Like, I mean, and not just like the reward of dopamine, which causes happiness, but I'm talking about, like, for instance, like, let's say you do your job well and then you get a raise for it. Would you say that's part of like your well-being because it promotes things that you've done well? Yeah,
I'd say it's probably not as important as happiness, but yeah.
Right. But in general, like, it's probably like a minor inclusive, right? So what about people's lives? Do you think that's the most important thing when it comes to well-being? Because I would say that's the top of the list, right? Or at least in my opinion.
In most situations, yes. There's certain, like, for instance, my grandfather. He spent a decade in a bed, out of his mind. That wasn't well-being. It would have been better for him to die 10 years ago.
I mean, arguably, I don't know your grandfather. I don't know the situation. I mean,
in my opinion, he didn't even know who he was. He didn't know anybody.
Let's kind of take this down the rabbit hole of. Don't you think that, given that they were doing the will of the great Hitler, that the soldiers who were happily putting people in gas chambers were not only receiving rewards of the gold that came out of their teeth and the possessions that belonged to the Jews that they were murdering, but also the accolades of a soldier and the graces of Hitler, all while doing something that they thought was indeed the right thing? How many people do you have to make happy to justify killing one person?
I've never done that.
Well, I'm not asking if you've ever killed anyone. I'm just asking, is there a situation in which you can make enough people happy that you could justify killing someone with utilitarianism, or in your view of utilitarianism?
In my view of utilitarianism, I don't think you could ever justify killing someone for happiness.
Well, what if you thought they were going to be bad for your health?
Sorry, you broke up. What was that?
I said, what if you thought they were going to be bad for your health? For instance, you thought they were going to contaminate the gene pool. Because that's how Hitler justified it.
Yeah, I don't agree. Like,
I mean, we know that's not the situation, right?
Yeah,
you and I.
I know.
But what if that is what you believe? Like, for instance, and it's not to belittle or berate anyone that has either like Bell's palsy or Down syndrome, but that's an extra chromosome or a minus chromosome, if I'm not mistaken, for 1 + 1 - 1. Do you think that you could potentially justify killing someone with an extra chromosome or a minus chromosome because it will eventually impact your health?
To me, when you're looking at the rubric of well-being, life trumps all the other things that you can measure.
What about sanity?
What's that?
What about sanity?
Like, if I don't do this thing, it's
no, like peace of mind and knowing who you are. Because, like in the instance of your grandfather, you said he didn't even know who he was, but you said it would be better for him to be dead. But now you're saying his life is the most important thing, even over his own sanity? Because it seems like we have a contradiction there.
Yeah, I mean, he kind of wasn't. I mean, his body was there. He wasn't there.
Right, but that's what I'm asking. Like, so he's still alive, like, though, right?
If kind of not. I mean, the body was
a heartbeat and a brain pattern, because that's pretty much all it takes to qualify these, or humans at least.
Well, so like, he wasn't himself. It was just a body.
And again, I don't know the situation, and I'm not trying to prod or like put you in a corner or anything. It's just kind of, I'm just kind of interested to see how your response is to these kind of things, because like, even if, for instance, like, I don't know if you've read anything about like Phineas Gage. It's like one of the most well-known cases of how we know that the brain impacts the emotional side of humans, right? A railroad spike went through his chin, up through his brain, into his prefrontal cortex. He became a hateful, spiteful, wife-beating drunkard. Before that, he was a church-going, wife-loving family man who everybody in the community knew and loved, right? Would you say, because of the change that Phineas Gage went through, at some point we could justify doing him further harm? Because it seems like in your situation of your granddad, I'm not saying a railroad spike went through his skull or anything, but in the situation of people with like dementia or other mental cognitive disabilities, then just because they're not themselves, are they better off dead?
So with Phineas Gage, if I remember correctly, he did actually have recover some, but you wouldn't know that.
You said he recovered some?
I believe so.
They removed the railroad spike from his head, and he lived on for like 10 more years. He didn't die from it immediately, but he did become an abusive, terrible person.
No, I pretty sure I remember reading that the stories of him his personality staying like that way for the rest of his life were overstated, and he actually did regain some of his personality. But that doesn't matter. You wouldn't know that at the beginning. I guess it's only in hindsight that I can say that it was better for my grandfather. It would have been better for him because he was not living a life that he would not have wanted to live that if you'd asked him before that all happened, hey, do you want to, if this is what you want, what do you want us to do? He would not have said he wanted us to
Let's say
seek moral
this.
life.
Let's say you have a scenario. Now I'm going to throw to these values out there that the values are just arbitrary, right? Now, let's say there's a person, not a bad person, just totally innocent person. Now, if he lives, well-being on the planet has 100 points. If you murder him, then well-being has 101 points. Under your model, what is the moral thing to do?
Strict utilitarianism would say the model.
What would you say?
I would say it's not.
Why not? Because now it sounds like you're deviating from utilitarianism.
I'm not as strict utilitarianism. It's my, like, all things being equal, I suppose. But sorry, I got lost. Well,
I'm asking you, why wouldn't you consider it justified? I mean, why wouldn't you consider it moral? I'm sorry.
So if we're saying 1 point, whatever that point is, that doesn't sound like it'd be enough to take a human.
But it is okay. So let's say if you kill him, well-being is doubled. Is it moral?
Strict utilitarianism, it would be moral.
What would you say?
I wouldn't do it. I'm not.
Okay.
But I don't always do.
Not what you would do. What would you consider moral is what I'm asking.
What would I consider?
Yeah, it's not about what you would do. I'm asking, is it moral?
So it's moral if well-being is increased.
Is moral if well-being is increased?
Yes.
Okay. So now you're saying so murder would be moral, or is it not even a murder?
So we go back to like talking about killing Hitler when he's a baby. That's an innocent baby.
I like to stay with this because like now we have like with these arbitrary values that I've given it, we have like an objective measurements system, right? So it's like with this scenario, so you killed the innocent man, right? So and you're saying that would be moral. So would you say this isn't even a murder? Or can some murders be moral? Because like to me, that's an oxymoron, right? You can't have a moral murder.
I mean, you're talking about hypothetical situations. I'm having trouble really kind of figuring this. Like, but if you're saying,
I mean, hypotheticals, they're good at like looking at the mechanics of an ethical system. That's why I'm doing this. For me, this would be a very easy question to answer. I would say I would say no. It's immoral.
Problem.
Sorry, what was that?
Yeah, I was just saying this is the very, very basic trolley problem, which I'm sure you've heard of and you've seen in endless possibilities and configurations.
Yeah.
Are you willing to flip a switch to save people, that kind of thing?
Minimize how many people die.
Except with this one, there's literally no one dying if you just don't kill them.
Right. And so like I have trouble imagining where I would. So you're saying, well-being is double. And I've already said that I think human life like is the biggest metric of that well-being.
So let's
so
put it.
I'm
okay,
not
so
very,
you so
let's
so
put in
you
a
okay, so
trolley
you look at
problem.
life
Let's
that kind of overpowers everything else.
let's
well,
put it in a trolley problem to make it easy. I can do it really easy. Okay, we have a train going towards nothingness. Okay, it's not going to hit anything, but it's coming to a fork in the road that you can flip a switch and cause it to go to the track to the right. Okay, the track to the right, with your foreknowledge, has a baby Hitler on it. Is it moral? I'm not asking if you personally would, but is it moral for you to flip the switch?
yeah, I think so.
So you're saying you can morally murder baby Hitler.
Yeah.
Think that answers your question, Triple A. Am I wrong?
Well, sort of, because like in my scenario, there wasn't a person who like it's not like this individual was going to grow up and then murder a bunch of people. It's just that people would just benefit from him being dead, whether he's happy or he's wealthy. You could just take his stuff. Like even in that instance, would you say it's okay? But again, you were saying that health, you value human life more than anything else. So that's kind of takes precedent.
Yeah.
Right. So people's happiness, right? There's no amount of happiness that could overpower somebody's life, right? That could outweigh somebody's life. Is
Unless
that your
it's volunteer.
position?
Like, yeah, like it's volunteer. Like, so when like going back to my grandfather, I wouldn't pull the plug because he didn't say that. But if I had known, like, I don't think he would have said, if this happens to me, I don't keep me
Sure.
alive.
But would you say that there is no amount of happiness or any other aspect of well-being that could outweigh one life?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. All right. So, all right. Now let's say you're trapped in a room with a rapist. The only way he's gonna try to rape you. The only way you can stop him is by killing him. Do you just let him rape you?
Probably not.
Why not? Because now it seems like you're putting something above human life.
Yeah. You're right. It's not coherent. Um,
What that's what I mean. I think utilitarianism just has some problems, and I think like even your versions, I think like you're seeing issues with it, which is why you're deviating from it.
well, no, I don't.
But you say you're not a strict utilitarian, right? And so this is what may be like the third scenario where you would deviate from utilitarianism.
Yeah, I feel like utilitarianism is the ideal. Like, but it only works if you have perfect knowledge, which we don't have. But if I knew, all the outcomes going out for however long you want.
But even then, like if you say perfect knowledge, like when I grant your metric, like where you value life above anything else, you would even just the knowledge out the window. We're talking about moral ontology now. It would be moral to allow a rape because you'd have to kill someone to prevent it, despite the person you're killing being the rapist.
Yeah, that's a problem.
Yeah, that's the issue that I have. Well, so and I think if we're going to use well-being as the metric, and you had said you had agreed with me that well-being is a good metric, then we can also acknowledge that killing the rapist isn't good for well-being, right? Because we consider the rapist as well, like he's part of the scenario, but because of the context, because of the situation, right? Because of your right to bodily autonomy and protecting your own safety, you can say you ought to be excused from the consequences of this immoral act, which is just another way of saying it's justified.
Sure.
So, what you say? Would you agree?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's justified immorality.
Fair enough.
Ah. I'm not used to having people agree with me on this show, man. Okay.
I still think I still I feel like the times that you've said justified immorality,
Mm-hmm.
it just feels more broad than I feel. There's things that
Gotcha.
you said.
I have a really good guess about where one of those things are.
Abortion.
Yep, that is my one guess.
That was one, but I've heard you say it a few other times. I can't remember any other instances specifically, but yeah, you said this is immoral, but it's justified. Oh,
Mhm.
It was I think there was like a self-defense thing, and you were saying that's immoral, but it's justified.
Yeah, I put them both in the same scenario. So the reason why, like, the self-defense thing. So, like, Fasad had pointed out, one time I said self-defense was justified immorality. He pointed out, no, not necessarily. The act of, if you're harming someone in your self-defense, then is a justified immorality, right? So the reason that's essentially the reason why I'm saying it's a justified immorality, right? Because if you're harming someone, like you're shooting someone, you're punching them in the face or something like that, you're harming them. Period. That's just the way it works. That's kind of like what it entails to use self-defense in that context. You're going to have to use some sort of harm to get the person off of you, right? The abortion falls under the same category. When we're talking about an abortion, someone's being harmed, right? The fetus. Period. So that's why I consider it immoral, because it violates that fetus's well-being. But I say the pregnant person has a right to their bodily autonomy. So that's what makes it justified. And I only consider it a moral question at a certain state. So we're talking about, like, you have an abortion, like before there's any sentient life, then it's not a moral question at all, because there's no well-being, there's no being, there's no consciousness, there's no experience. So I would consider that an abortion at that stage is amoral. It's like no different from, like, I don't know, clipping your fingernails or cutting your hair or something like that.
So, what about? I mean, because you've thrown this at me. What if in 150 years, if that fetus had been allowed to survive, they would have cured cancer?
No, it's still, yeah. That doesn't matter. So that person, it's still that person's body. No one else has an obligation to it. Period. So, like, what I'm not about, like, maximizing well-being. That's a good thing, but that's I don't base morality on the maximization of it. I base morality on the thing itself. Well-being, not about maximizing it, but just well-being. It may be a fact that if I would have whacked Facade in their head with a brick, that a lot of people would appreciate that. And I know they actually would, right? Yeah, because people don't like Facade. But yeah, it would still be immoral. It will violate his well-being.
But you do have justification for doing immoral acts.
Yeah, yes, there could be a justification. Maybe Facade was attacking me or someone else, and I said, "Hey, stop that!" Wham. That could be a justification. But if I was to say, "Oh, letting Facade not get whacked in the head is going to create some sort of butterfly effect that's going to later be the catalyst for some great catastrophe." No, I don't consider that.
Why not?
Well, because he had nothing to do with it.
What?
Well, let's see. That I mean, I already saw a problem with my response to that. So let's see here.
I would say kind of like you pointed out earlier when I was asking you about like the descendants of Holocaust survivors or victims, and you said, well, we could just kill one person. I think you were talking about maybe just that person or their descendant. But for instance, like if I have a child and that child has a child and they get married to someone who ends up pressing the button that causes nuclear destruction for the entire Earth, I'm not a direct cause of the nuclear destruction for the Earth. Even if AAA was sufficiently knowledgeable enough about the future to know that that was going to happen, you wouldn't justify something on the fact that that person in the future is going to do an action just because I was in the causal chain. Otherwise, literally everything is linked to everything else.
You're right.
We're all part of the causal chain. That's how I would defend that.
Yeah, that's actually a really good response.
So actions are only justified if the justification is a direct result of the action.
No, not like in that situation that you just gave. I mean, so there might be some other. Well, no, I would stand right behind what Facade said. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just keep in mind that
all actions are only justified if it's.
No, not necessarily. It's justified based on circumstance, but I can't say that, like, I'm going to judge you for something that your grandchildren are going to do, or that I'm going to judge you for something that your grandparents did.
Right. Like perhaps and like 10 years from now, you're gonna meet some woman, have a child with her, and then that child grows up and murders me. And I know in advance, killing you would not be self-defense. So killing you 10 years in advance would not be self-defense of that.
Right. Defending himself from the attempted murderer would be.
Yeah.
I don't think that would fall under utilitarianism either. I mean, it would.
Well, I'm not saying it. I'm not saying that would. We were just kind of addressing the question you had asked about whether or not the immoral act is a result of the agent that you're enacting violence on right then, or just part of the causal chain. In this instance, you're just part of the causal chain, but you're not doing it. We also got to consider the immediacy of the act as well, right? So like we do this in war. Like I work in intel operations in the military, right? And so there's things we look at. Like, you ever studied the Israeli 6-day war?
No.
How so Israel struck first, right? However, it was still defensive, right? Because those Arab armies lined up their tanks and armies right on their border. They were a few hours from invading. The threat was imminent, and so they went ahead and bombed them, right? If Israel had bombed like maybe a year prior, this would have been totally unjustified. You have to consider the imminence of the threat. Like, you can't just be like, oh, I'm omniscient. I know this person is going to do something bad to me 10 years in the future, so I kill him now. That's not what we're talking about.
Okay, so that's what I'm saying. It's the direct, like, the what justifies it is that it's the immediacy of
Well,
whatever you
that's
present.
part of it. That's part of it. In some situations, so I mean that's why I would. It depends on the scenario, because you might be able to construct some other scenario where immediacy, the imminence may not even be relevant. You know, I mean, I'm not sure like what other scenario you could imagine, but that's just kind of what I'm saying. So like what Fasad said about, you got to consider the overall context, and the details that you look at, they may vary depending on what exactly is happening. But yeah, I would say, like, in a lot of times, imminence is definitely part of a huge thing that you have to consider when something's justified. Also, you have to look at the causal agent, not someone that's part of the causal chain.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, were you satisfied with the answer, or do you want to?
Oh no, that sounded great.
Okay, awesome. Well, I think that's probably a good spot to end it, because like I gotta get ready to feed my kid. Fasad, did you want to say something else?
No, nothing particular to this. I did want to give Sam last word.
Oh, yeah.
Do we have a guest for next week before we give Sam last word?
Not yet, but I'm working on it. We may possibly, and there's a guest. He's definitely going to come on. I just don't know if he's going to come on Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday. We're trying to set that up. But the
Also,
topic
worst
is going to be about the love of God. I think the love of God is trash.
Also,
So it's
worst case scenario, if we don't have a live guest, we'll be doing a live video review. I figured out the issue with the audio that we were having, and I remember what we did last time to solve it, and I can almost guarantee you that we can get it working just in case.
Okay.
Welcome, right. Punch Drinker. You're a little late to the party. We're wrapping things up. We're giving Sam,
but we know who you are now.
I still don't know who he is because I'm confused. I have to.
You don't remember?
No,
bro.
Yeah, I saw your text. I don't remember who it is. Sorry.
Okay.
Memory's gone.
I don't want to.
Yeah, it's fine. Don't dox people.
I can't say it live. Yeah, I don't want to say it live.
Yeah, Sam, last word. So anything you want to say, wrap up, clarify, promote, just speak out on, or give your 2 cents on without interruption. The floor is yours, and then I will close us out.
I don't really have anything to say. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it, man. Thanks for coming on, bro.
We appreciate it.
Yeah.
Always good to have a good conversation. If you enjoyed what you saw, please come watch us again next week. If we don't have a live guest, we will be doing a video review. And if you like what you saw, please like and subscribe. Thank you guys so much for